Well, Caroline, welcome to the show. I'm particularly interested in this chat because, as I mentioned, I've got a couple of teenagers myself, and all my friends have teenage children. It's just the kind of generation I am, the age I am at. Most of us have got teenage kids, and I'm actually slightly concerned by the statistics. Are you?
I am, yes. I think we all know that different people are struggling, don't we? But when we look at the research today, that actually 3 in 4 of all teenagers interviewed have experienced some physical health issues as a direct result of poor mental health since March, it is really worrying. And even more so when we read that half of them have turned to harmful coping mechanisms such as drink, drugs, or self harm to try and alleviate those symptoms.
That's quite serious, isn't it? Especially when you imagine that a lot of the time has been spent effectively having to stay at home.
It is, and the research also shows that the teenagers, they feel like they're in limbo, and they feel like they're missing out on life, and they're struggling to have that optimism for the future that which they would really have. And when we think about their daily structure's been removed, hasn't it? Which is usually what
Mm.
they're so busy doing, going to school and college. And then when you think about their exams being cancelled, I suppose they don't necessarily know what's going to happen with their next steps of study or college or working life. So it's really understandable that they would feel like they're in limbo. But what we want to do is encourage conversations with parents and family members to try and improve how they're feeling, and also suggest some positive coping strategies.
Right. So, what can we do as parents?
Okay, so the first thing I would be recommending as a mental health nurse is to be observing your children, your teenagers. So what's their normal personality? Are they usually quite quiet, and are they usually quite bubbly? Because if you're seeing a change in that personality, that's quite significant, isn't it? And I'm not just talking the odd day here or there, because even as adults, we can all have that, can't we, where we can be quite grumpy and we lack motivation and want to have a duvet day. It's about when that sort of continues and becomes like more of a significant change over weeks rather than just days. And it's at that point, or maybe earlier, that we'd be wanting conversations to be starting. So I don't want parents to feel like they've got to have all the answers, because they certainly haven't. They're not mental health professionals, and obviously they're not teachers either. So parents being compassionate to themselves about doing the best job they can, but opening that conversation. So that can be face to face, it can be while they're out going for a walk, or it can even be by text.
Right. Okay. So, just keeping an eye on the behavioural changes and get the conversation flowing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
so when you
coping
open that
mechanisms.
conversation, sorry.
Yeah, there's a bit of a delay on the line. Sorry about that. Yeah, continue. As you open that conversation, yeah, what should we do?
So, as parents open the conversation with their teenagers, what they're hopefully going to work out is how that teenager is feeling specifically. They might say they're absolutely fine, but they're lacking motivation. So you can start building on that. They might say, "No, I'm really struggling, and I've not wanted to worry you." We hear that a lot. We speak to teenagers here at BUPA on the Family Mental Health line. They tell us they often don't tell their parents things because they're worried about adding stress. And what we've realised is when we do a bit of work with the teenagers is that they don't often realise that the parents would be the first to know, to want to know what's happening for them, because as we know as adults, you can only really get the right help if you've been open and honest with somebody. And it's about, when you've had that dialogue, listening to the child or the teenager and letting them then lead you about what you can help them with.
Mm. But it's not all doom and gloom, is it? Because I know that some kids are coping quite well. I mean, how do you identify which is which, and how do you encourage your child to sort of slot more into the positive attitude side of things?
Yeah, we know being a teenager isn't easy at the best of times. That's without the introduction of social medias, and that's without a huge pandemic going on. So it's
Mhm.
about supporting them as best we can, isn't it? And like I said, being comfortable to admit that you might not have all the answers, and that you as a parent or an adult or just a human being, you're struggling too with the situation. But we can get through this together as best we can. Keeping the conversation open, as I've mentioned. Is there somebody in the family that can support them a bit better, be it an older brother or sister, an auntie or an uncle, where dialogue might be a bit easier, and they may not feel as worried about worrying their parents. So conversation will lead to all of these positive things, and keeping an eye on them for improvements. If it doesn't work, then revisiting it and what can work, and reaching out to appropriate services. We have the BUPA mental health hub, so that has lots of information for teenagers and parents, and there's also lots of other NHS and charity websites that we can signpost to as well.
Right, so there is help out there, and I'm guessing the best thing to do is observe and talk.
It is, absolutely. So it starts with those steps, and then from there, when you've had that conversation with your teenager, or even before, you can reach out and have some practical help to your individual situation, whatever's happening for them, whether it is self-harm, whether it's anxiety. So BUPA members can contact us on the Family Mental Health line, and that's staffed by trained advisors and mental health nurses, including myself. We will have a really in-depth conversation about what's going on for you and your teen. If you're not a member of BUPA, then rest assured there's lots of practical advice on the BUPA mental health website, signposting you to some really good agencies that are open for you.
Caroline, thank you ever so much. It's a bit of a serious subject, and I know as a parent, it's my worst fear is that my child's not happy. So thank you very much indeed for taking the time to just talk us through a few steps. That's really helpful.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.